Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunā Tira Vanachari. Yamunā Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Kunja Bihari. All right, tonight we will read from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the book that comes after the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses and Srimad Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses, as well as many of the verses having purports or commentaries. So it's a wonderful book. The science of God, the science of God realization, self-realization, all the different incarnations of Krishna. So many different historical accounts are there to learn from. So we'll just take a brief look at Canto 9, Chapter 6, which is titled The Downfall of Saubhari Muni. And we'll start with text 39. So if everybody could please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Katitavachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinitarinam Vancha Kopadurubhishcha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So when we talk, or when we hear the word downfall, the downfall of Saubhari Muni, what does that mean? Does that mean he was walking one day and he fell down, or what exactly does that mean? Let's say the Bhakti Yoga circle, downfall means they're at a particular level of spiritual advancement, a particular level of greatness, spiritual greatness or qualification. And downfall means they fell from that stage. So that's what we'll be discussing, the downfall of Saubhari Muni. So, let's see here. Yamunā tarjale magnas tapyamana param tapaha nirvitim mina rajasya tishtva maitunya dharmanaha. Okay, translation. Saubhari Ṛṣi was engaged in austerity deep in the water of the river Yamunā. Has anybody ever been to the river Yamunā? Got some persons, okay. That's in Vrindavan, India. Holy river, you could go there sometime. So that's where he was. He was in deep water of the river Yamunā. What was he doing there? He was meditating. So that's pretty powerful. It's a powerful yogi who can meditate underwater. Not all yogis could do that, but he could do it. So while he was meditating there, he was deep within the water of the river Yamunā when he saw a pair of fish engaged in sexual affairs. Thus he perceived the pleasure of sex life, and induced by this desire, he went to King Māndhātā and begged for one of the king's daughters. In response to this request, the king said, "O Brahman, any of my daughters may accept any husband according to her personal selection." Purport. This is the beginning of the story of Saubhari Ṛṣi. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Māndhātā was the king of Mathurā, and Saubhari Ṛṣi was engaged in austerity while submerged deep within the river Yamunā. When the Rishi felt sexual desire, he emerged from the water and went to King Māndhātā to ask that one of the king's daughters become his wife. So this is very interesting, because this particular this particular Rishi, he was so powerful, and one of the Rishi's powers is that they have the power to control their senses. All living entities means all souls embodied in human form or in animal form, whatever the particular form they're in. But especially since we're humans here, we'll talk about humans. They have senses and they have sensual desires, and there's a long battle with this particular topic going on for a very long time. Is one satisfied just by unlimitedly engaging their senses in sensual desires? That's one particular path that some people go on. They just whatever their senses desire, they just fulfill that. So that's one idea that people have. Another idea people have is that by controlling the senses, by completely controlling the senses, this is a source of happiness. Now, where do the Vaishnavas fall? What do you think? Does anybody want to say? What do you think, Nelson? Oh, in the middle, huh? Why in the middle? Yeah, I mean, practically you have to fall in the middle because the senses have desires, and I mean, if you didn't gratify your senses at all, I mean, your life would stop. You know, eating is a particular gratification. If you didn't do that, you know, your life ends. For example, breathing, yeah, breathing's very important also. You could ask Saubhari Muni how he was not breathing underwater. I'm not sure how he was doing that, but so yeah, there's like a middle path. So Krishna, understanding that that we as souls have desires, or sensual desires, and by nature we want to be happy, so he has facilitated such a nice process, the process of Bhakti Yoga, in which all of the senses can be engaged. For example, the eyes want to see beautiful things. So Krishna, he appears in the form of a deity, like we have here on the altar. We have Radha Krishna in the middle, or Radha Giridhari, and then we have Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra on the right, and Gaura-Nitai on the left. And they're very beautifully dressed with flowers and so on. So in this way, we can engage our eyes in seeing the beautiful forms of Krishna. And in this way, our eyes become an instrument for our own liberation, rather than entanglement. So yeah, a big part of any religious or spiritual culture is controlling the senses. And actually that's one of the main qualifications of a guru, in case anybody was wondering. Rupa Goswami explains that in the Nectar of Instruction. Vacho vegam manasa kroda vegam jiva vegam madura pasta vegam etan vegam yo vishaheta dira sarvam epimam pritivim shashishyat. That one who can control the demands of the mind, anger, tongue, belly, genitals, speech, all of these demands, one who can control those, one who is not controlled by those, but one who can control those, is a authentic spiritual teacher, and they can make disciples all over the world. But when we look at any authentic spiritual practice, it requires that controlling of the senses. And actually, whatever we do in our life requires some control of senses. Like if you want to become a doctor. Anyone want to become a doctor here? You do? Okay, nice. Oh, you wanted? Okay. Okay. Anyways, let's just say you wanted to become a doctor, or maybe somebody here is a doctor. If you want to become a doctor, or if you became a doctor, it requires great sense control. You have to really focus. You have to really pay attention. You have to really be on top of things. You can't just let your senses go all over the universe and expect to become a doctor. Then after you become a doctor, you can let your senses go all over the universe. So in this way, as Nelson was saying, we accept the middle path. We accept some sense gratification. But ultimately, we understand that real love means not not to engage in the pursuit of our own sense gratification, means our own selfish pleasure, but it means to dedicate our lives, dedicate our very selves to the pleasure of God, or to the pleasure of Krishna. So in other words, whatever we do is for the pleasure of Krishna. That's the ultimate goal, pure devotional service. So devotees of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they're able to control their senses by engaging them in Krishna's service. That's the main way they control their senses. Now, Saubhari Muni, he controlled his senses by great austerity. He was a great yogi. So then the question is, why would he fall down because of this? I mean, he was meditating there for a long time, like years and years and years and years and years. So then he just happens to see two fish, as Prabhupada would use the word copulating. Why would that cause agitation in his mind? He was in control of his senses. Does anybody remember? Yes, Govardhan. You said offense? Who did he offend? Yes, Garuda. So Garuda is the great devotee, great bird carrier of Lord Vishnu, and generally devotees are vegetarian. Devotees generally don't eat meat, fish, or eggs. But Garuda, because of his particular body, he eats fish. He's allowed to. We have Garuda here above the door, Lord Vishnu's carrier. So Garuda was touring Vrindavan one day, and he was hungry, so he came to have his lunch in the Yamunā, which happened to be fish. So Saubhari Muni, because he was meditating there for so long, apparently he developed some friendship with the fish, and he didn't like that Garuda was coming there to take the fish. So then at that particular point, Saubhari Muni said to him, if you come back here again, he's very angry and powerful as a yogi. Sometimes yogis get angry. So he said, if you come back here again through my mystic power, through my austerity and the power I've developed, I'm going to curse you to die. So Garuda, he didn't come back, but because of that offense to a pure devotee of Krishna, the example is given that just like when you're walking in the sun, in the hot sun, you may be able to tolerate the heat on the top of your head. But if you're walking barefoot, it's very difficult, practically impossible to tolerate the heat on your feet. I mean, if you're talking 115 degrees or whatever it is, Arizona. So the idea is that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could tolerate people criticizing, offending him, no problem. But he has a very difficult time tolerating his devotees being offended, because he loves them. So when Saubhari Muni threatened Garuda, a great devotee of Krishna, then that was the beginning of his downfall. In other words, by that offense, he lost his power. And he was a great yogi meditating underwater, and then he just saw two fish, and then he just, his mind became so disturbed that he gave up his yogic principles and got out of the water, and we'll read what happened. So now we may wonder, okay, well, how does that relate to me? How does that relate to us? You have the principle of kama. The principle of kama is the principle of kama is selfish desire. So you have Saubhari Muni here. Okay, it was a sexual desire, but there are so many desires. What about people's desires? What about people being workaholics? You ever knew any workaholics? People just work, 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 work. It's a type of addiction, work. What about people who are, there's so many things. People are, it's unfortunate. I don't mean to, make it light in any way, but people are addicted to so many things, and it causes a lot of suffering. So in other words, by Krishna consciousness, we will be able to conquer many vices, many things that actually cause our destruction, that cause our unhappiness. We'll be able to conquer those, no problem. But by not treating devotees properly, by offending other spiritual practitioners, we lose our power. And we become attached to things that are not worth being attached to. And we have problems. And we may become completely derailed from the path. So we'll just read a few more verses before we open it up for questions or comments. So Saubhari Muni, he got out of the river, okay? Saubhari Muni thought, I am now feeble because of old age. My hair has become gray, my skin is slack, and my head always trembles. Besides, I am a yogi, therefore women do not like me. Since the king has thus rejected me, I shall reform my body in such a way as to be desirable even to celestial women. What to speak of the daughters of worldly kings? So in other words, he was meditating for so long, be gray and skin slack, and Dravida Prabhu's mentioned after you in the bathtub for what you get all wrinkly. So Saubhari Muni was not in good shape. So he said that, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to transform myself by my mystic power, and I'm going to become so handsome or beautiful, or whatever is usually handsome you say. I'm going to become so handsome that even women of the heavenly planets will be attracted. He said, what to speak of worldly kings. So that was his plan. So he did that, and he married quite a few queens. I won't tell you how much because I don't want to scare anybody. Thereafter, the princesses, being attracted by Saubhari Muni, gave up their sister relationship and quarreled among themselves, each of them contending, this man is just suitable for me and not for you. In this way, there ensued a great disagreement. So he enjoyed his household life. He completely forgot about his yogic principles and became a worldly sense enjoyer. Okay. In this way, Saubhari Muni enjoyed sense gratification in the Mathurā world, but he was not at all satisfied. Just as a fire never ceases blazing if constantly supplied with drops of ghee. So clarified butter, ghee. So he had all facility, by his mystic power, he had all facility for being a topmost sense enjoyer of this world. Actually, I just met one of my old friends. He told me he started a business and he was doing very well, making a lot of money. And nothing wrong with money. It could be used for good purposes or bad purposes. Many times used for bad purposes, but he's making a lot of money and just really trying to enjoy. He's a devotee, but he has that very strong side to him of just trying to enjoy the Mathurā world without Krishna, without God. So he was telling me, he was like, I was amazed. I literally tried so many different ways of enjoying, and I just felt nothing. I was amazed. So like this, Saubhari Muni had all facility, but he was unsatisfied. And then he started to think. Therefore, one day, Saubhari Muni, who was expert in chanting mantras, was sitting in a secluded place. He thought about himself, about the cause of his fall down, which was simply that he associated himself with the sexual affairs of the fish. Alas, while practicing austerity, even in the depths of the water, and while observing all the rules and regulations practiced by saintly persons, I lost the results of my long austerities. So like this, he started lamenting. He started lamenting his particular situation. In this way, he passed his life in household affairs for some time, but then he became detached from material enjoyment. To renounce material association, he accepted the Vanaprastha order and went to the forest. So he somehow or other got back onto the path, and he took up his yogic principles again. And then what happened? He went to the forest. His devoted wives followed him, for they had no other shelter than their husband. When Saubhari Muni, who was quite conversant with the self, went to the forest, he performed severe penances. In this way, in the fire at the time of death, he ultimately engaged himself in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By observing their husband progressing in spiritual existence, Saubhari Muni's wives were also able to enter the spiritual world by his spiritual power, just as the flames of a fire cease when the fire is extinguished. So they became perfect. Saubhari Muni, he went back onto the path, and he brought all of his wives, and they all became perfect. So it was a happy ending. All right, does anybody have any question or comment? Yes.
Is it okay if I ask if people want to be on their phones that they leave the temple?
Okay.
Unless it has something to do with what we have.
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough thing sometimes with phones in the class. Because the speaker may think sometimes, oh, they're not listening, but maybe they're taking notes or something like that, like she was mentioning. So, all right, any other comment or question? Yes.
Thank you for the class. Can you elaborate on the different ways that we can offend devotees? Like what consists of an offense?
Okay. Thank you.
To avoid. Thank you.
I believe there's 6. Now, I don't know if I could remember all of them off the top of my head. I probably should be able to, but one is to think ill of a devotee. That's offense. That's an offense. So another one is not to be happy when you see a devotee. Now, it's an interesting offense because you may say, well, why is that an offense? It's like, hey, I'm just not happy to see you. So what? Why is that an offense? Because actually, not being happy to see somebody, it's actually much deeper than just what it looks like. There's something going on in the background. So, for example, let's say that I'm in a room with my friend Krishna Dasa and Balaram Dasa. We're together, and we're speaking about another devotee. Let's say one of my friends. Let's say we're talking about Hasagrami. He's not here, so we're saying, and I'm saying, Hasagrami. We go back so many years, 8 years, 10 years, and he's such a kind-hearted, selfless person, and I'm glorifying him, and I'm speaking highly of him, and I'm regarding him as my great friend. And let's say I haven't seen him for 10 years, so then all of a sudden he just surprises us, and he walks in the door. So at that time, I'm going to feel very happy. Oh, Hasagrami, you're here, my dear friend, and there's a connection there. But let's say I'm in the room and I'm speaking about someone. Oh yeah, did you hear what they did? And yeah, that's, and they're always like this, and they're always like that, and just kind of speaking ill of, and then they walk in. There's a sense there that I'm not going to be happy to see them, because I'm not treating them as my friend. I'm not treating them as someone I'm not treating them as someone who is dear to me. So, so that's an interesting one. Nelson, you want to look up the rest? If you look up on your phone, the 6 offenses towards Vaishnavas. And then we could get some, because one is to kill a Vaishnava. That's pretty offensive. So to speak ill of one, not be happy to see one, to kill one. We're getting it soon. Here, you could bring it to me, please. Thank you. All right, here we go. There's 6 types of behavior that result in such a fall down, okay? Killing a Vaishnav, blaspheming him, so speaking ill. It's interesting because Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that you can't speak ill of a Vaishnav based on his or her lower birth or bad birth. You can't speak ill of them based on their materialistic or sinful activities before becoming a devotee. You can't speak about their sinful activities after becoming a devotee. So then you're starting to wonder, well, what can we talk about? Is there anything? Is there any justification? Doesn't seem like it. So he's really, some people say, where's the fun, right? Killing a Vaishnava, blaspheming him, feeling malice towards him, some hatred, not greeting him upon seeing him, becoming angry with him, and not feeling happiness upon seeing him. So those are the 6. Yeah, you're welcome.
Could you elaborate on what a devotee is under these circumstances?
Well, okay. There's different definitions of a devotee. A devotee, if you look it up in the dictionary, can you pass me this cup, please? Thank you. A devotee, if you look it up in the dictionary, it means one who is devoted to something or someone. So devotees of Krishna means they're devoted to Krishna. Now there's different levels of devotion, and there's different definitions of a devotee. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna come again 500 years ago, he explains that a devotee can be defined as one who has chanted Hare Krishna once. Geez, it's like once he's a devotee or she's a devotee. So that's one definition of a devotee. Now another definition is, okay, he gave another definition. A satsanga tyage vaishnavachar. The behavior of a devotee is that a devotee renounces the association of non-devotees. Now what does that mean practically? A devotee of Krishna still goes to work. A devotee of Krishna still goes to school. They still associate with their family members who may not be so interested in Krishna consciousness. So they're still mixing with people in the world, but they don't mix with them closely. Closely in the sense that they're very respectful, they're very kind, but it's not that they go up to them and say, what's the goal of life? Please tell me. Or, whatever. So that's another definition of a devotee. Of course, in the 11th canto, you have some more definitions. 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2 more cantos after this. You have a Kanishta Adhikari, means somebody who sees the deity in the temple, sees God in the temple, but doesn't know how to deal with other practitioners or people in general. And such a person is a Kanishta Adhikari. And then you have the Madhyama Adhikari. Madhyama Adhikari, they give all their love to Krishna. They make friendship with the devotees. They're very merciful to the innocent. And they avoid the envious. Because if you get too close to the envious, they become more envious. Just like if you're dealing with somebody who's very angry, sometimes it's good just don't deal with them. Go somewhere else because they become more angry. I have experience with that. I've lived in an ashram with Hare Krishna monks for almost 20 years, so sometimes they get angry. They're also humans. So Madhyama Adhikari, then there's Uttama Adhikari. Uttama Adhikari sees Krishna everywhere, and the heart, and thinks everyone is a devotee besides themselves. So these are the different definitions of devotees. But we should also consider that just as there's Vaishnava aparad, or offenses towards devotees, there's also what is called as Jiva aparad. Jiva means soul. So there's offenses to souls, to anybody that could also obstruct. Because ultimately everyone is a devotee. As Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, what's that? Mamai vangsho jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. That Krishna says that all living entities, they're my part and parcels. They're intimately connected with me. So that's, I hope that answers to some degree. Does anybody have any other? Yes. I think you want to he'll pass you the mic.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Nice class and nice story you shared.
Thank you.
So in fact, there are also a lot of other stories in Bhagavatam talking about how devotees, they seem to be going through the normal, household life or something. So with this kind of, going back and forth between being a sincere devotee and living a normal life, and the example that you gave, I think my question is that it gives I sense two different messages in there. One is kind of an encouragement that, okay, even if you are engaging senses, there is opportunity for you to revive your spiritual life and and it can also be seen as a sanction, saying that, okay, it doesn't matter what you do, you'll still be able to make it. So how do we take that?
Okay. So one thing is that, because yes, someone may look at this historical account and say, hey, Saubhari Muni, he offended Vaishnavas and he fell down. But, he came back to the path and he was perfect. So maybe I should just do that. You also have a Jamil in the 6th canto. A Jamil is a similar story. We won't get into all the details right now, but yeah, he really fell into illusion. But then later on in his life, he called out Narayan, Narayan, and he got another chance. I mean, the thing to consider in relation to that is that that was unnecessary. It was unnecessary for Saubhari Muni to go through that, or a Jamil. And they were fortunate enough that they came out on the other side. There's no guarantee that if I fall in illusion, or if we fall in illusion, or if a person falls into illusion, that they're going to come out on the other side. So it's a cautionary account. Mostly this is supposed to be a cautionary account that, to be careful. Like many accounts you see in the Bhagavatam. There's so many cautionary accounts there. That if you do this, then this is going to happen. But just because one is in a household, I mean, most people are, that's normal and natural. For someone to be married, to someone have a family, to work, to live like that, that's completely normal. But there's a Krishna conscious way to go about that. And don't ask me because I don't do it. I'm a monk, so I could teach you how to be a monk, but I can't teach you how to be a householder. But there's many good examples of householder devotees who they go to work every day. They chant Hare Krishna. They engage in hearing about Krishna. They offer their food to Krishna. They do so many things. Yeah. So it's not that if one's a householder, they're setting themselves up for failure or something like that. That's not the case at all. So, yes. Antonella?
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So if you could elaborate, how can we forgive the devotees who offended us? Because I'll speak for myself. I'm really trying to forgive some devotees who offended me. But when I see them, I'm not happy to see them. So you said I should be happy. So I'm really trying, but I guess, what should I do?
Yeah, forgiveness. That's a difficult one. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is there's a really intelligent devotee, nice, intelligent devotee. His name is Mahatma Das. Maha-Atma. So Atma means like soul, and Maha means great. So Mahatma is a great soul. So Mahatma Prabhu is a Mahatma. So he's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he has a lot of seminars. So he gives a seminar on forgiveness. It's not just like an hour. It's, he gives like 8 classes on forgiveness. So I do think that it's very helpful to listen to such things, because he'll bring up things that you never would have thought of. So many nice points. So yeah, I would recommend that. But you want to hear what I have to say? You can just listen to what he has to say. I mean, it's really important to communicate. It's really important to communicate because, like, if someone has offended you or somebody has offended us, and we're feeling that or we're holding that within us, it's important to communicate. We could sit down and speak with them and say, and sometimes there may have to be a person on a mediator there, and to sit down and speak and say, this is what happened. This is how I'm feeling. I want to reveal my mind to you, and then they reveal their mind to you. Now, many times this works, but sometimes people, it doesn't work. People become more angry, so it's a little difficult. But that is a good thing to do. And I've seen very fiery people, very passionate people, do well in such circumstances, especially with the mediator. So that's there. Another thing, we should never underestimate the power of prayer. We could pray to Krishna, please, I have this within my heart, please remove it. So that helps a lot. So we could try those things. Communicating, sometimes writing a letter. Sometimes you write a letter and somebody else gives it to them. So there's all these different things. Communicating with them, praying. Ultimately, it's very helpful to take shelter of the chanting of Hare Krishna, because in many ways it's a trick of the mind. Because the mind loves to experience something, whether it's love, whether it's hate, whether it's whatever it is. Just the mind wants something to just grasp onto. Anyone who's meditated or tried to meditate, they could understand this. Because you're meditating and then, something comes into the mind. And what does the mind want to do? It wants to grab it, whatever it is. So those are some things, to listen to that seminar, to communicate, to pray, to take shelter of the chanting, to try to understand the workings of the mind.
Where do we find the seminar? It's online or?
Yeah, if you go to mahatmadas.com,
Okay.
yeah, you'll find it there. Yes. I think you had a question?
Yeah, I think I have a question, comment. Back to the story. It's about desire and the object of desire.
Can you hold it to your...
It's about desire and the object of desire and the better. Just that yogi. So it seems like, there's two kinds of desire the way I see it. The one that if you're hungry, you eat, you're full, you're satisfied. But there's other desires like addiction where it's like throwing butter on it and it never goes out. So was his motivation because he couldn't get his desires fulfilled, or the realization that no desire can be fulfilled except by Krishna, that he went back on the path? I mean, the redemption, the realization that desire doesn't work.
You mean when he jumped out of the water and tried to engage himself?
Yes.
Yeah, he realized that however much he tried to satisfy his desires, that he was never satisfied. One of our teachers, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, absolutely amazing teacher. He read so many wonderful commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. But he said he's speaking from a male perspective, but you could, from a female perspective, just switch it up. But he said that that even if a man is given all the grains in the world, all the food in the world, all the wealth in the world, and all the women in the world, still they won't be satisfied. I mean, that's a lot. It's like a lot of food, and I mean, how many? Anyways, that's a lot. So he's saying that, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and I personally accept that. I accept that statement of his. Because the problem is, by nature, we're not, not the problem, but the truth is, by nature, we're not material. We're spiritual. So how is anything material going to satisfy us? It cannot. It's impossible, because we're spiritual by nature. Just like devotees would give the example often, that if you take a fish out of water and you give the fish a nice cigar and a nice Harley Davidson with a whatever 5-star hotel and restaurant, still that fish is I want to go back in the water, let me back in the water. So similarly, you may give a human all that stuff, all these things, but because they're not in their element, they're not in the spiritual nature, they're not satisfied, and therefore there are many problems in the world. Why there's so many problems, crime and hatred and all this stuff going on, because people aren't satisfied. If they're satisfied, that wouldn't happen. So yeah.
So that path, people take a path to fulfill their desires, ultimately realize they can't and choose another path or perish.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
So ultimately, those who desire that path, as you're mentioning, that have all your senses filled, finally realize that's impossible.
That's the idea. For them to realize that it's impossible. And that's a principle of reincarnation.
Right. Exactly.
We're trying to work things out, trying to come to the right understanding, the right conclusion.
Okay.
So
just accept it on faith, or give it your best shot.
Well, that's the principle of spiritual happiness. You have in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Vishya vanivartante nirahasya deha rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. So Krishna is saying that a conditioned soul may be restricted from the objects of the senses, but because they are fixed in intelligence, they're able to restrain their senses, and specifically they're able to restrain their senses because, or control their senses because they're experiencing a higher pleasure. Param drishtva nivartate. It means like a superior pleasure, a superior happiness. So it's not meant to be theoretical, you just accept it, but we're supposed to be experiencing you have those statements on one hand, but on the other hand you have the bliss of Krishna consciousness that comes from kirtan and so on. So it's very practical.
Oh,
Yes?
one comment. There's one thing about this Saubhari Muni pastime. You just have to feel like he's such a fool. Here he is in the middle of the Yamunā river, right? In the middle, he's in Vrindavan. But he's not taking advantage of being in the Dham. He's underneath the water. He's not in a temple. He's not chanting Hare Krishna. He's a powerful yogi. And then it just shows how weak, your detachment was. He saw a fish copulating, and he couldn't get it out of his mind. Now, if the devotee is on pilgrimage in the Dham, in Vrindavan, and you take a bath in the Yamunā river, and that's one of the things that you do. But you go to the temples, and the big thing is a sangha. What was his sangha? Fish. He wasn't associating with other devotees. And there's a more sobering example of this with Bharat, who also was renunciate. And he was actually a great devotee. He was already at Baba stage, but he was alone. And when I won't get into all the details, but he became attached to a little fawn, a helpless little fawn. Well, who would not, take it? But he didn't. But that attachment eclipsed his devotion. And when he eventually died, he thought of the fawn. So he had to take another birth. He was in much better shape than Saubhari Muni, don't get me wrong. But here's the common denominator, that if you're trying to do it alone, you'll never succeed. The first thing is, of a non-devotee, you have to watch, asat sangha tyaga, that you have to give up bad association. So the first quality of a devotee is that he runs for association. That's what this whole movement is about, is give you a chance to come together, see the beautiful deity, become attracted, and most of all, chant Hare Krishna together. It's the Sankirtan that's so powerful and can give you, as Balaram said, the higher taste, and sublimate these lower desires until they disappear. And that's vairagya, you see. So that's the I think one of the lessons. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Step on.
All right. You have... Okay, we'll be ending soon, by the way.
Prabhu, thank you very much. Definitely, I was thinking about it when you were talking about it, and one of the things you have discussed is very powerful thing is happiness, right? And I was just thinking is like happiness is relative term, and it can be different for different people, right? It can be material, spiritual, or devotional happiness, as per Prabhupada. So when somebody says, I'm fed up with material happiness, right? Because they have set some expectation around that. And when that they feel achieving as a human mind, like we want more and more. And if we are not getting that, then we think it is missing and we try to get it. Whereas in case of spiritual happiness is as you get more, you enjoy more and you feel satisfied. So that, I mean, this is my perception. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I feel.
When you say when you get more, you're referring to like, what are you referring to?
Material happiness, right? For example, somebody feel happy with the more wealth, right? They make money and they feel happy about it, but then still they see like, if I can get that, that means I have potential of getting more, or there is a possibility of me getting more.
Oh,
and so they try to get that.
Okay, so you're saying that all right, well, I got some money and I'm feeling pretty happy, and I could get some more money and that will make me more happy, but
Yeah.
you're kind of like satisfied at every
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah, Yeah.
All right. Well, still, whatever happiness, I mean, some people are not just like completely uncontrolled. I mean, a lot of people aren't completely like uncontrolled, just, greedy and just, senses on fire going everywhere. But still, even if you try to enjoy like what we call happiness in the mode of goodness, you're a good person. You pay your taxes. You don't hurt anybody. You're vegetarian, this, that, whatever. You're a little religious or whatever it may be. Even that happiness, because there is some happiness there. I'm not saying there's not happiness. There is happiness there. Confirmation, right? But that happiness, even that happiness of living a good life, that is like compared. All of this happiness is compared to like a drop in the ocean, like a drop from the ocean. Whereas you have the happiness derived from Krishna consciousness, it's like an ocean, it's unlimited. So it doesn't really compare. It's like comparing this, light bulb to the sun or something. There's no comparison. I mean, there is in a sense, but all right. Okay, you had something to say last?
Going back on the subject of forgiveness, I forgive everybody for not turning their phones off or having them on. But it seems like this is a sanctuary from the outside world. And so it could be distracting to some, and people sometimes just don't want to be around the phone that's on, if they're very sensitive. But there's also something I wanted to mention about the Hawaiian culture having a process called ho'oponopono, which is self-forgiveness first. Because most of the time if someone offends you, it's their own process. And if we take it personally, that's our responsibility. And so when we can forgive ourselves, if we react to it and lash out with the same type of behavior that they're doing, it's just creating a vicious cycle. And it's like a mantra. You say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And you just keep repeating that. And it works, like any mantra.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all very much. Now we will stand up and we'll have the second kirtan for 15 minutes. And then looks like the feast is sponsored, so you don't require a ticket. So then we'll serve out dinner. So thank you all. Hare Krishna.